Welcome to the Conscious Broadcast. I'm Danielle Kane, and I'm excited to have my good friend, Rebecca, but we don't call you Rebecca. We call you Akashic Bec, to the Conscious Broadcast today. So thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, me too. I'm finally glad that we got to get together. I want to just explain a little bit about what your skill sets are, what you do, and then we'll kind of chat of how we got together and the
Okay,
people that we seem
awesome.
to be intertwined with too.
For sure, for sure.
Okay. Akashic Beck is a psychic, intuitive, and medium, certified Akashic Records reader, numerologist, hypnotherapist, and past life regressionist, CBT and trauma facing coach, Qi Gong instructor in training, and student of esoteric knowledge. Her mission is to assist others on their path of understanding and healing, uncovering the layers so they can become the most empowered versions of themselves. Let's go into it. Let's first of all, I want to share how I even know you, and then I want you
Okay.
to dive in. So again, here I go. Hopefully Shannon's watching this because Shannon is my like 5 degrees of separation to everything.
Love you, Shannon.
Yeah, we love you, Shannon. But Shannon got this retreat with Beck's first retreat, right? That you hosted.
Yes. The
And
Witchwind Retreat.
right, the Witch Moon Retreat in Massachusetts. I talked about this in my last episode, episode 19 with Ashley Scott, and they're besties, Becca and Ashley. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But so long story short, Shannon could not go to the retreat. She was looking for someone to gift it to. She gifted it to me. It was the best gift of my life. So I thank you again, Beck, for having it because it really did change my life. So that's how we know one another along the
Yes.
fact that we both do the same, we have a similar technique in our hypnosis work that we do. So I had no idea that you were doing the same technique.
Oh, yeah.
Although it can evolve into it really does become your own style at one point. So it's nice to be able to know though that how close we were to knowing each other before we met
Right.
through Shannon. So
Right. Yeah, we totally could have met, aside from all of that.
yeah.
But yeah, I love SCHH. I joined back in March of 2022,
Hmm.
actually, and it has just been a remarkable journey, learning about hypnotherapy in the first place and what all it's able to do. And I've been a huge fan of Laura Whitworth for years. So
That's
I
great.
yeah, it's like sometimes you just see something and you're like, oh, I gotta go for that,
Yeah. And it's so
Mhm.
funny. I feel like, and you can probably talk a little bit about your path on how you became your main, I guess your main everyday type of practice is the Akashic Records, would you say?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I found hypnosis in the strangest way. It just kind of popped through. My sister was telling me about Dolores Cannon, just her in particular. And so then I went down that rabbit hole and explored quantum healing hypnosis, her specific
Mm.
technique. And I think it was what I was ready for. So it's like, I think you're given what you're ready for because when I met Shannon, I was just trying to understand what she was talking about. And I was like amazed at how important in time it was for me to get that information because I don't know if I would have really understood it. And I had heard it through other people, like psychic attacks and all these things. And I kind of was like, I don't really know what that is. It's not happening to me. So I don't really understand it. But then I started to put pieces together and then it made sense. Like even just when you go into a bar and you think of alcohol, right? Spirits.
Right.
And when you black out, oh, yeah, like everybody can relate to, I don't remember what I did on that day, but I was walking, I was talking, dancing, who knows? So it
Right.
started to hit home that we've always been among this type of energy. So,
Absolutely. And once you start, sometimes you kind of have to like step back from it because it
mhm,
can be overwhelming. Like
totally.
like connecting all of the pieces together. You're like, hang on, I got to sit down for a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And I think it's like I said, I think it takes a person to be ready to start to be able to take on such a practice like that, it's hard. I mean, I'm sure
It
that there's
is.
many things that we come across that while healing can, I like high vibe. I think you do too. I like the high vibration. I like to help people, but there's times where we have to go into the harder parts of the healing, because that's where
Mhm.
you get the biggest result from it, when you get to go through and experience something that maybe we've avoided before. At least I know I
Right.
have. I had, in order for me to get to where I was, I had to kind of go through the weeds a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's well, and it makes you a better practitioner, I think. You
Yeah.
know, just kind of being thrown into a situation, you know.
Yeah. Oh,
And because all of the training in the world, even if you're like studying to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, that real life experience is what molds you, it carves you, you know, and what
right.
strengthens your muscles, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So we kind of went through, we went right to hypnosis.
We
I'm
did.
glad we can kind of talk a little bit about that, because I think this will kind of segue into like, where did you get started? How did you even know what the Akashic Records are? I find that a lot of people that I've talked to that are in my daily life, that are at my gym, sometimes they don't really even understand what we're talking about. And I'm like, I think that the information comes to you when you're ready. And that's why I kind of said that. It's like maybe you're just not ready
Yeah.
for it yet, but you'll hear it enough. And if it's explained just right, it's like the light bulb switch turns on.
It absolutely does. Um, Sometimes you might hear something and it goes in one ear and out the
Hmm.
other, and it'll come back into your awareness at some point, you
Yeah.
know, in the future. And you're like, wait, I've heard this before. Where have I heard this? You know, and then you
Hmm.
start going down a rabbit hole. It's that planting of the seed, you know.
Yeah.
I think that those things happen for a reason, for sure.
Absolutely. Coincidences?
Coincidences, I
Yeah.
don't believe in those anymore because of
Right?
that.
Oh my God, it's so funny because I used to sing that song by Alanis Morissette, "Isn't It Ironic?" Do you remember that song?
Of
And I
course
would
I
say
do. I'm
everything
a
to Brian,
90s
"That's so
girl.
ironic. That's so ironic." He's like, "Danielle, it's coincidental. It's
Don't you think?
coincidental." And I'm
Yeah,
like, "You're right. Then there's no irony in anything, you know?"
right.
I think I just wanted
Now I'm going
everything
to
to be
start singing
ironic.
that song.
I know. Um,
Nobody wants to hear that, I promise.
right. No, I think that everything happens for a reason, just the way it should be. And good or bad, we're here to experience. I've been going through a lot personally with like hearing people kind of switch their belief systems
Mhm.
in this journey. And so I take that personally too. Like I really sit with it, kind of see where that person's coming from. But it always takes me to this place of, we're given this opportunity to experience, and we have choice in
Right.
this landscape, right? We're all kind of I like to
Mhm.
say we're all dropped in front of this mountain, right?
Mhm.
And we can have choices. We can go straight up, we can go around and up, we can go through the thicket of the woods of the mountain, but we do have a choice. But yeah, there's this landscape that I think we're all here exploring, that was something we chose before we came, and that's just what creator wanted for us and what we chose as well.
Right. Absolutely. 100%,
Yeah,
you know,
I don't know how you
and
think
we
about it, but that's kind of gets me back to like good or bad. Like sometimes we make bad choices purposely to experience the bad feeling.
absolutely. Because sometimes we have to experience those things so it'll sink in and hit home and
Hmm.
be like, okay, there's a reason that I wasn't supposed to do that. And
Right.
I just needed that one last kick in the pants, you
You
know?
one
Like
last
I just
time.
yeah.
Absolutely. That's so
Oh
funny.
man.
All right, so Beck, tell me a
Yes.
little bit about you. Tell me a little bit
Okay.
how your upbringing, or where you want to go, about how you are started doing this Akashic record reading, and we'll go into a little bit more details about that.
Sure. Okay. So I'll try to give you the condensed version. So, you know, growing up, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, I just felt different than the people around me, and I couldn't understand why.
Hmm.
And I tried, you know, for many years of my life, I tried to fit in to no avail.
Right? I
Um,
feel you.
and at some point, I just kind of gave up. So, but when I was a teenager, I want to say I was like somewhere between 16 and 18,
Mm-hmm.
I started getting into astrology and tarot and numerology and all of that fun stuff. And I would go to the new age section of the bookstore, the library, and which it wasn't very big,
Yeah.
like it is now. Especially, growing up in the South, there's a lot of stigma around those things. So I just kind of kept that thing to, it was like a special, like a secret thing that was just for me, and I
Mm-hmm.
didn't really, I had a couple of friends that were kind of into it, but they weren't into it like I was,
Right.
and so when I was probably about 18 or 19, that's when I learned about Edgar Casey,
Mm-hmm.
which if nobody knows who he is, he was called the Sleeping Prophet. I think he was born. It was late 1800s. He passed away in the 1940s. But he was a channeler of the Akashic Records, which at the time, for a long time, for many years, he did not know that that's what he was doing. But he was
Mm-hmm.
called the Sleeping Prophet, and he would go into trances, like sleeping trances, and he would channel medical information for people. And so if people had an ailment and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with their doctor, they would go to him, and he was spot on every time. He also had a Madrid of other gifts that just kind of came online, and I loved his story. If anybody wants to know more about him, like he has a really beautiful biography, and it just talks about like his faith and how he just felt this calling to heal people. He wanted to help people. He was a very devout Christian, and anyways, so long story
My
short,
mom actually gave
he
me some books on Edgar Casey too when she saw that I was starting to get into hypnotherapy. And
yes, yes,
it was really interesting. It's sometimes hard to read. I don't know how to phrase it, but like ancient English.
yeah,
Like
yeah, it was
he is
like hard to decipher.
expresseth how he feeleth.
Yeah, right, right. And you're like, you didn't have to go so hard, Edgar, like have some
Right. I'm
extra
like,
for that, but
can we
okay.
move on from the next one? I'm just kidding.
Right. But he's so anyways, I studied all about him, and I just found him so fascinating. I was
Hmm.
like, this man was incredible. And then of course he eventually started channeling things about the earth and about
Yeah.
timelines and events, and etc. And I think that's primarily what people know him for.
Yeah.
Were the transcripts. So anyways, that's how I found out about the Akashic Records.
Ooh. I
Was
had
way
no
back
idea
when.
that he was one of the people that led the way for Akashic record reading. I had no idea. It's
Yeah.
really fascinating.
Yes, he really was fascinating. So, um, anyways, so I studied all that, and and I always kind of kept those things kind of under wraps, and of course you grow up and you have to get a big girl job as you do. And and I kind of, put a lot of that stuff aside a little bit. I just didn't really have time for it, for a while. And then when I was 27, which was in 2009, I found myself at the beginning of a dark night of the soul,
Mm.
which, come to find out later, was the beginning of my spiritual awakening.
Hmm.
And I did not know what that was about. So
Yeah.
I went through a period of 7 years of hardship.
Mm.
And I was like, well, okay, there's obviously a reason why like I'm enduring all of this. And during those years, I had like little trickles, I guess you could say, of my gifts coming online.
Yeah.
I had, just like little moments where, looking back at those moments, I was like, oh, that's what was happening, that
Hmm.
kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, and then in it was 2016. That is kind of when thing because that was 7 years later, and that's kind of when everything shifted.
Hmm.
And I truly, like, the floodgates opened. I started receiving like all these downloads, like it seemed like it was out of nowhere. I was just pummeled with this information, with this energy. I was like, what is happening? I really truly thought I needed to go to a mental hospital. I thought I was losing my mind.
So you would hear them in
Um,
your mind? Would they come through like, or would they come in like visuals too? Or tell me a little bit about what that means to get downloads. Because a lot of, again,
sure.
I'm getting real specific for people to understand because they might realize something that they've
Hmm.
kept private, not knowing, thinking
Hmm.
that maybe I'm just not going to share that I got a down. They didn't know they got a download, but maybe there's
Right.
something going on. Because I think right now we're at a very, very important pinnacle point where we're shifting regardless if you like it or not. You're shifting in a way. So,
Right. No, and I love that. Yes. I would love to share. So, how it came in for me personally was I was hearing my name initially. So I
mm.
heard some, and I thought it was my husband talking to me or something. Like, what do you want? And I was getting irritated at him. I was like, why do you keep saying my name for no reason? He's like, I'm not. And I'm like, okay.
Someone's
Once I
calling me.
realized, you're right. um, on the big phone, the,
Yeah.
the channel phone. But I was hearing my name, and then when the quote floodgates opened for me, I woke up one day and I just felt different. My whole body, I felt like I had stepped into another dimension almost. It just was a very overcoming feeling.
Mm.
I was very emotional. I feel bad though.
Mhm.
And I
You
think
felt
some
like more
people,
sensitive, more like um where you might not have been as emotional, maybe a little bit more closed off. You maybe were more
mhm,
open, would you say?
yes, absolutely, yes, I did feel more open. But I didn't feel ungrounded at the same time. It
Right.
was, I don't quite know how to explain it, but that's the best way I can explain it. It
Okay.
was just like I felt like I was walking into a home that was my home that I didn't know was my home, but it
But it felt
is.
good. It felt
It felt,
comfortable. It felt like a knowing that I've been here
yeah.
before.
And so, just, like I said, I was hearing things, and then I started hearing different things. I started hearing sentences or phrases. Um, and then once I was realizing, okay, I know I'm not crazy. I know I feel okay. I do feel safe. I don't feel unsafe. I just really, my logical, my ego mind was trying to figure out what was going on.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, this is not what you're used to. Sound the alarms, because that's what our ego is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to protect us.
Right,
It keeps
absolutely.
us from walking out into traffic. It's just, that's what it does. And so it was doing its job, but it wasn't helping at the
Mm-hmm.
same time. So um, then that's when I started to get visuals. So one of the phrases that I heard was like, go into meditation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was weird because I had started, wanting to regulate my nervous system. Like that was like a something that really really called to me at the beginning of this journey. It was like, regulate your nervous system, because I had just, like I said, gone through all of this stuff, and I was completely dysregulated in that way.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess they were kind of leading me to the places where I need to go. I started um watching like meditations on, or like guided meditations on YouTube and things like that. um and then that's when I went into meditation, I started doing it consistently for the next few days. I received a visual, and it was a lion.
Mm.
And I was like, and little did I know that that was one of my guides.
Okay.
That's why I'm so passionate about working with people's animal spirit guides. I had a guide come forward, and it presented itself as a lion. He said his name was Azra. He said, I'm here to help you. And I was like, could you have sent something not so scary, but okay. And
Right?
I'm
Was it
still
did it
me,
scare you at
okay?
first? Did so that was the first time you had a
Yeah.
visual, would you say?
Like, really? You got to send a lion? Like, you
And was
couldn't
it
have
in
sent, like,
meditation?
yes, it was
Yeah.
in meditation. Um, And I was actually in the bathtub. I remember I was in the bathtub when it happened because I was just like, taking baths like soothed me, and as an empath, like empaths get it,
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
being in water is like legit. And so I calmed myself down enough to actually receive that.
Mm.
So I received the visual, I received the message. My guide said, "I'm here to help you. It's time." And I was like, what?
Time for what? More lions coming.
Die? Yeah, And
That's so
so
funny.
it sounds ridiculous, I'm sure, but I mean, it was so real. And looking back, like I just smile about it because I know, like, I realize, like, hindsight's always 2020. So anyways, so Azra, my lion guide, came forward and said, "Okay, it's time." And then, "Tell me what it's time for." He said, "It's time for you to read the records." I said, "What?" "What records?" "My
Like there's
medical
records,
records." you know
like a cassette
and
record, right?
right. He said, "No, the Akashic Records." And I was like, "Bro, like, I am not a monk living in Tibet. Like, I can't read the records."
Right.
There's protocol. He's like, "No, anyone can read them. It's your turn, and this is what you're meant to do." And I said, "Okay." I was like, "You know what? Can't make this stuff up. It's strange. Life is stranger than fiction. I'm just gonna go with whatever they're telling me." And so he showed me, like, my guides showed me every step of the way. This is
Yeah.
why I tell people that it's so important to trust your guidance. It's important to trust your guides. It's
Mhm.
important to trust yourself, your
Absolutely.
higher self, your intuition. So literally showed me in my waking life, in my conscious reality, where I needed to study, where I needed to go, who I needed to talk to. They laid
Mm.
it out for me in a silver
Wow.
platter. And I was like, "Okay,
And you
well,
always
I'm just
felt
going
like
to do
held.
this."
You never felt like scared, or you never felt like they were like trying to persuade you in the wrong way. And the reason why I'm asking
No,
this is because a lot of people, for what you're saying, and I hope you don't mind me bringing this up, because for
sure,
me,
go for it.
I really, the best healing that I've had was inner standing, like you said, going within, because I was so detached to
Mm-hmm.
the gift God gave me. And
Right.
that's where I feel like right now, a lot of people that I'm hearing in various places are saying, how do you know that that's guidance, that's the of the light, or the or from the right people? How do you know you're channeling good beings or whatever it is? And so I like to stress this, because all I can say is discernment, and you learn discernment over time of what feels good and what feels what not doesn't feel good. Either way, like we said earlier, sometimes you got to go through things to get an understanding, and it might not be favorable or pleasant, but it was still meant for your journey. So let's go back.
No,
I'll let you
absolutely.
segue back in as to
Yeah,
the feelings of your intuition and knowing that this was the guidance that you needed for your life path.
right. And I do agree with you. Discernment is key. It's number one.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I think what let me know is, like we were just saying, I felt held. I felt safe.
Yeah.
I did not feel like I was being led down a dark or scary or harmful path.
Yeah.
And I think they knew that they needed to do that for me, because
Right.
otherwise I probably wouldn't have done it. Um, I'm very, I'm like very safety conscious, and and also, just, I guess, when the floodgates open, it allowed me to access a level of my intuition that maybe I previously had not been able to access.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
I think it was kind of like my soul saying, "You're ready. It's okay. It's safe for you to do this." I
Yeah.
did feel safe. Um, when I was receiving this guidance, I never questioned it, because, like I said, I felt safe. I felt like I was in this little cocoon of safety.
Yeah.
I felt held the entire time. That's why I'm so passionate about people connecting with their guides too, because your guides, like, these are other beings, these are other souls. Like, many of them have had earthly lifetimes, you know, and they've been human, or they've walked the earth, you know, before us, and they get it, you know.
Yeah.
They may not understand this time, but they understand what it's like to live an earthly existence.
Yeah.
So I just felt very, very protected in that way, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
Um, so anyways, like I said, I started reading more about the records because I was like, I just thought it was so funny. I was like, I read about this years ago. Why is this like coming back up
Right
into my
now.
awareness? But
Yeah.
it's just like we were talking about. They were planting that seed way back when, you know, they were just waiting for me to be ready. So I started like talking to people. Um, I started studying it, reading every book I could get my hands on. I started watching YouTubes, just trying to find out as much information as I could. And whatever did not resonate with me, I just left it behind and, you know, didn't give it much thought. I was like, maybe I'm not advanced enough for that or something,
Okay.
you know. So then they led me. They said, okay, next step, you know, because they gave me a list, you know, a punch list, I guess. They were like, okay, the next step is you are going to have a reading done. And I'm like, okay. So I had a reading done. And they literally led me to who I needed to read for me. Um, and this person, I mean, I think they were very nice, and I think they definitely gave me um, a beautiful reading. And they were like, but there were things I was like, I mean, you always critique, right? You
Yeah.
always just kind of critique. And I was like, okay, well, if I were to do a reading, I wouldn't do this. And they were like, see, this is why we brought you to this person, um, and it's it's nothing negative about that person, no disrespect. It's just like, if I were to do a reading, this is how I would do it,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
not necessarily comparing, but just like
But just feeling out what feels
getting,
comfortable, what feels like
yeah,
the right way to communicate
hmm,
information to the
right.
person.
Right, because everybody's different. Everybody has their own way. So I was like, okay, okay, I see why you did that. And then they led me to, they were like, okay, well, now you can have a teacher, you can learn. And they led me to um, a teacher who taught me how they read the records. And it really resonated with me. And I was like, okay, I like this. I could get on board. And so I just continued my studies. And I remember the first time I went in my records, it was just like a random day. It was like a Thursday. And I, um, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So I did. And
Hmm.
immediately I just felt like I was filled with peace. I started crying. I was sobbing. I was just like, I felt like I was home. And I was like, okay, um, this is where they have been trying to lead me this whole time. And it was just like a plethora of visuals and feelings, and they were just like soaking in. They were like, here it is, soak it in. And I was like, okay. And that's when I met my owl spirit. There is an owl that is kind of like a guardian of the Akasha. And you know just was introduced to like the different types of guides and guardians that exist within the Akasha. I met my personal guide of my Akasha. His name is Mishka, and
Hmm.
he chose that. That's his spirit job. That's where he works, and he and I did have earthly lifetimes together. We were married and a pivotal lifetime together. And so I just had nothing but love for him. It felt like someone I had seen before. And he actually helped me. So once I got in, and I started getting more comfortable in the energies, because it can be overwhelming.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's a lot of information, it's a lot of energy, and so you kind of have to get accustomed to it. So he taught me everything I needed to know. He has just been a blessing, a wellspring of knowledge for me, and he taught me like how to read, and we were kind of talking about like, okay, well, my teacher said this, and he said, okay, you can do it that way if you like. You could do it this way if you like. Anyway, it was a whole conversation.
Yeah.
It was, and this was over the course of probably, I would say, a year and a half. I just read for myself during that
Hmm.
period of time, and then one day I was, once again, something I kept under my hat. I didn't tell anybody what I was doing, but my husband and my son noticed. They're like, "Mom's reading all these books, she's doing right."
Did they know
So
what you were doing? Did you keep it private?
I just kept it private,
Yeah.
and they were just like, "Okay," So I guess I was fortunate in that regard. So then one day I was telling a friend about it. I was like, "Can I tell you a secret?" And she was like, "Yes." And I said, "I've been practicing reading the Akashic Records." "Oh my God, you have to read for me." "Oh, that's wonderful." She's like, "Well, how long have you been doing this?" And I said, "A year and a half." "What? And you didn't tell me?" And I was like, "Well, no." I just didn't feel ready yet. Okay, so then I tried to do a reading for her. The first time I tried, I got no. I was like, I literally, the first thing I do is I blame myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
"I did it wrong. Oh no."
Yeah.
And I was stressing. I was unwell. I was like, "Okay, I'm so sorry." And she's like, "It's okay. It's okay." She's like, "Maybe we can try again." So I asked Mishka, "Can I try again?" He said, "Yes, you can try again." Second time, no. I was like, I felt so dejected. I was like, "I'm
Did you
doing
feel like
something
it was
wrong."
just like a slam door? Did you feel like the door was closed and they said no,
Like,
no? Like
no.
you like you
Yep.
and you heard them like the clairaudient voice said no?
Yes. I heard them say
Wow.
no. And I was like, Ugh. Then the third time, I was like, "Okay, we're going to try one last time. And if they say no, I'm not going to do it." The third time, they let me
Now,
in.
was
And
it all in
then,
one sitting that you asked, or did you guys revisit
no,
at separate times?
this was over the course of a couple of weeks.
Okay.
Hmm. So, um, when the third time I was able to go in, of course, I can't share anything that was
Sure.
contained, but I will say this. It was, I read that time, the first time, for someone else, like I read now. I entered into a scene,
Mm.
and it was a past life. And I was just looking around. I was like, "Whoa." Like, I felt like I was really there. And I was like, "Oh, this is neat." And I was able to figure out like where I was and who I was with. But my friend didn't want to overwhelm me. So she only asked me one question. And I told her what was happening and what her guides were saying. Cause at that
Yeah.
time, like, the guide had not come forward, but they were talking to me and they told me. And she just starts bawling her eyes out, and she's like, "Oh my gosh." And anyways, but I told her about what was happening. It all resonated for her. It made
Mhm.
total sense to her. And then I closed out the records, and I was just like, you know,
I did
I
it.
was
It
like,
happened.
"I
What just went
did it."
down? No.
Literally, I was like geeked out. And so she was like, we were both sobbing, and we were like, "Oh." And she says, she was like, "That was Becca, you have to do this for a living." Like, she's like, "This is amazing." And she went and literally told everybody about me. And I was
Mhm.
like, "Oh my gosh." So I was like, "Well, I'm not doing this as a business, right now. This was just something I was doing for funsies, I guess." And then Azra came back in and said, "No, you have to do this for a living." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I
Okay, so
started
it's
to,
not a hobby now. I just been told
it's
by the
not a
guides.
hobby no more. So I was like, "Well, I can't just jump into it like that because you don't know about this 3D life." So, I was like, I have
Right.
to like have things in place, because I had been a business owner at this point, I had been a business owner for like 8 years. I was a photographer.
Okay.
And so I knew about like having my own business,
Right.
but this was kind of a different ball game than photography. So I started, getting what I needed. I got um, all the things that pertain to the matrix, like a business license and insurance and tried to figure out, how am I going to set this up, and
Yeah.
things like that. That was another reason that they brought me to this other reader, was so I could kind of have a baseline, like, okay, well, this person does this, and I really like that. I don't want to copy it, but I'll make it my own,
Yeah,
things
absolutely.
like that, things that made sense, and so, anyways, after about 6 months, I felt ready. And I just kind of did my own thing and I put it out there. And I was like, okay. I was like waiting. And then my friend who I'd read for like I said, had been telling people about me. And I had a couple of people come to me. I read for them. They said it was amazing. And it just started from there. Like I get a lot of word of mouth.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I went on a trip to Sedona with this friend. She was leading a retreat and asked me to come and be a teacher, and I was like, and I started. I started, and I had gotten back, and I didn't mention this, but I had started getting back around that time, getting back into numerology and astrology and all that, like really absorbing it, soaking it in. um I had always kind of kept numerology, like I had always like followed it and read about it. I took classes on it and everything, but I got certified as a numerologist, which was a big deal for me.
And she's
And
amazing, folks. She's amazing.
oh, thank you,
You
I
were
love it
so good at
so
the retreat with
much.
that numerology. I'll never forget when you pulled my card the first day. And
No,
I
you're
don't
a
know, you
26/8.
were just amazing. Just
Oh,
amazing.
thank you.
So good.
I absolutely love the numbers, and I found out why later, but I so anyways, I taught about the Akashic Records and numerology at the retreat, and everybody really loved it. I got a lot of good, positive response, and that was like, I'm not afraid to say, love constructive criticism. I'm like, if you like have some constructive criticism for me, please let me know. Like, I really, really want your feedback. You're not going to hurt my feelings. Like, I really, really
Hmm.
want your honest opinion.
Yeah.
Um, really helped me. That retreat really helped me, like, start to try to get out of my comfort zone, because I'm
Hmm.
like typically kind of an introverted person. I don't put myself out there a lot. Um, so yeah, it just
Kind of
has
started unfolding there.
unfolding from there. And
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful and I love it so much. I'm very passionate about it. And then, of course, that led me to SCHH because, like I said, I had loved Laura for a hot
Hmm.
minute at this point.
How did you come across
Um,
Laura?
I was just messing around on YouTube one day.
Hmm.
And I was just looking for, because like I really feel like around that time there wasn't nearly as much like spiritual content
Hmm.
as there is now. And I was like, at that point I was just looking at tarot readers and numerology. And then one day I just happened to come across her videos, and like
Right.
I was like, yeah, I had read about Dolores Cannon,
Right.
and she was talking about Dolores Cannon. I was like,
At the
bruh,
time.
okay, yeah.
Yeah.
She's also QHHT. So
Yep.
I
Yep.
started following her and I was like hinging on her every word. And I was
Hmm.
like, this lady is so real. So I was very excited to,
Right.
and who would have thought, back then, who would have thought one day that I would have been read for Laura Whitworth? Like,
Did
people
you
geek
really
out
read for
over,
her?
I
Oh,
did.
that's awesome.
um,
So exciting.
I geek out like over Laura Whitworth, and like other people geek out over celebrities and like, stuff like that. And I'm just like, a fangirl.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of Laura. I'm a big fan. I'm
So,
getting actually a session from her next month. I'm getting
whoa.
a real SCHH session from the founder, so I'm excited about that. Yeah. Yeah,
Do
we're
a
doing
happy
it.
dance. Anyways,
Oh
I know I
man.
said a condensed version, but I don't think that was condensed. Sorry about
Yeah, it's okay. And
that.
I had the opportunity at your retreat to have a session with you, and I loved it. I had no idea what to expect, and it was quite funny. Um,
It was
I don't know if you
funny.
remember any of it, but I had a parent. I don't know if you probably couldn't forget it because you're like, who is this person? Someone's like in my face dancing, and I'm like, oh God, who is that?
I was like,
Do you
yeah,
remember
yeah.
Anastasia?
And of course, I can't share anything because they're your records. But yes, I remember, and
Yeah. Oh, I
I
don't
just
mind
remember being
sharing a
like,
couple things too, but yeah.
you know,
But I think you were so caught off guard because like, this never happened to me before. Like, this person
it did
needs to
not.
settle down.
I was like, wow, she is like out here living her best life and her truth. She felt
Yeah.
completely uninhibited and free.
Yeah.
And and correct me if I'm wrong. I know that you like really wanted to feel that.
I
That was
did.
something
I
you were
think that
craving.
it came at the perfect time because
Mm-hmm.
I have been very, I guess, part of what the retreat did for me was start to dive into really who I am. And I think I was always trying to live up to other people's expectations my whole life. So I created alter egos my whole
Mm-hmm.
life. And so I suppressed a lot of who I really wanted to be. So yeah, in that you create who you are. Essentially, there are still parts of me, but I think that there
Mm-hmm.
were pieces of I've always. I mean, I'm very big on freedom, expressing myself, and um having the guidance of femininity. A lot of it had to do with like the feminine energy. Because
Yes.
I've taken on a lot of because I didn't feel safe, because I'd never felt really in my body. I honestly took on a lot of masculine energies, and only really had masculine energy around me as an influence. I didn't have much feminine nurturing because
Yeah.
the females that were in my life were also experiencing the same thing. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Right.
It gets deep, y'all. I'll tell you that
It
right now.
does. It
Deep in a
does.
great
But it's
way.
so, yes, and it's so good. And I know that there are so many women out there who can relate to that,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like we've never been able to like embrace our feminine because we have had to be strong in our
Yeah.
masculine and lead with that. And we feel weird and uncomfortable and out of place when we do lean into our feminine
Absolutely.
energy. And that's why like we have a hard time like saying no. We have a hard time um you know we struggle with people pleasing. We struggle with like not knowing when to relax and like always having to be productive all the time. And we struggle with our creativity. Like there's so many
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
signals
Creativity was a
that
big one. I shut that off a long time ago, again, to try to adapt to my environment. And it wasn't a natural environment for me. It definitely was really difficult to thrive with creativity. And I'd always say I'm not creative. And
mhm,
now recently, like I'm starting to respect my level of creativity is just different than most. Like it's not me being an
mhm.
artist. It's not me. It's more of like my capability of manifesting and co-creating
Yeah,
um other things, if that makes any
right.
sense.
It does. And um yeah, and when you're living in survival mode all of the time,
Mhm.
yeah, you can definitely shut off because your body's like,
Totally.
oh, I'm sorry, I need to like have all my resources for my survival mode, so
Yeah,
you like put all of your energy into that.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it was amazing. I'm so grateful for your gifts and that you put on such a beautiful retreat. I got to meet
uh,
so many good friends too. I still touch base with quite a few ladies that were there.
yes.
And
Oh,
obviously
I'm so
we
glad that you do.
yeah, we stay in touch and I'm talking with Ashley quite a bit. She's actually coming here. Did she tell you?
Yeah, she told me. Yeah, she told. We were actually talking about it this morning. She's like, I'm going out of town. It's like
Yeah.
I
So now I got to
know.
get you over here and then I got to come over and visit y'all. Yeah.
I know. Yes, y'all.
Yeah, y'all. That's what
Bring that
happens when I
girl.
talk to Beck. The southern twang comes out from somewhere in me. I love your accent though. I do. I love it. I love it, love it, love it.
I always hated my accent. And since I've been doing this, I read for people all over the
Mhm.
world, and they're just like, of course, I love their accents, and they're like, "Oh, your accent's so great." And I was like, "Oh my gosh," I felt I was always so embarrassed of it. So it's like helped me learn to love my southern drawl. I can't
Absolutely.
complain.
Yeah, you have such a I love it. I love the way that you present yourself and just like I said, I even referred you to somebody. So like I will always like if someone's looking for this and really wanting a reading and wanting to know more about who they are and where they go in their life, Beck is amazing. So anyone who's
Thank you.
listening, she's just
You're so
a great
sweet.
person. She's so nurturing. Talk about feminine energy. I mean, whenever you had your
Oh,
spiritual awakening, your feminine came in full on because it you do. You just know how to get a group together. You know how to when we were there, you led a beautiful retreat. It put so much thought and effort into it, and you got to tell us a little bit
thank
about
you.
what's to come. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But
Ah, okay.
even in my session, you were just so when you come in with expectations, like it's going to be this or that. But for me, it was just nice to have someone explain a little bit. Like I haven't only had you redo my reading. I've had to talk. I've had a person do like a group reading, which I'm sure is very different than a personal one because I know how
Mhm.
hypnotherapy is. Like if you're going to do a group regression, it is way different. I think it's more of like
Way.
a meditation, like a guided meditation in a way. Um,
Yeah.
versus and again the type of work that you guys we're not doing the one where we're trying to make people cluck like a chicken on stage or
Right.
I don't know how to do
Oh
that
man.
so don't come to me for that but but yes, so it's a
Make
very
me
different
look like a chicken,
experience.
please,
But
in
I did
front of
ask
other
questions, but
people.
before that, you kind of gave me a landscape of this life that you saw. So is that a unique trait to the Akashic record reading that you do? Like where you step into a lifetime? Do most people who read the records experience someone's guides like the way you do and or the life of a past life? Because we you did go down a past
Mhm.
life with me.
Yes. So, well, I truly don't know how other people do it, but um, I, yeah. So my readings, I conduct them the same exact way every time. But I never know what I'm going to see. But typically, like I said, I enter just like I did for my friend that one day. Is I entered into a scene, and it was a past life. And that's typically where I end up. I enter into a scene, and the past life is something um, that is important for this lifetime. So there may be like reoccurring themes, or there may be a lesson in that life that is repeating itself in this
Hmm.
life. It
Yeah.
always pertains. It's never for no reason. So um, then typically like a guide will come forward, and I can also usually tell this is a cool thing that I'm able to do when I'm connecting with someone's guide. If let's say for example, they come to me and I hear them first,
Hmm.
I know that that person has some like really potent clairaudience, and I
Oh.
will ask them such. I'll say, do you hear things, and or do you get like ringing in your ear? Do you hear words? And they're like, oh yeah, yeah, I do. And that kind of tips me off like that's their strongest gift.
Mm.
Or if I have like a lot of visuals, I'm like, you're a really visual person. And they're like, yes, I am. So that kind of tips me off. Like everything means something.
Yeah.
And then their guides will come forward, and it's always a guide. We have a multitude of guides, but whoever comes forward is the one that can help you the most for where you're at. They know,
Yeah.
they're like, I volunteers tribute, and they come forward. you know
Wonderful. That's wonderful.
yeah, and it's really cool. And sometimes like a guide will come forward, and it'll be someone completely unexpected that you're like, what? Kind of like we were talking about your guide, like you were
Yeah.
like completely by surprise. But it's somebody that like really embodies like
Yeah.
who you are wanting to be, like who you are wanting, like their attributes or something you're
Yeah.
wanting to take on.
It was really interesting. I mean, you gave me an animal guide. I'm trying to remember because I've done some work with I guess I don't know if it's Gene Keys where you have different animal creatures or if it's human design, but
Hmm.
I do remember. I don't know if it was an owl or something. I felt like it was some kind of hawk or something or eagle. I can't remember.
Yeah, it was a bird. I
It was a
remember
bird or
that.
something. Yeah. But
Yeah.
also like I felt like the my ancestors came through too, which is really cool.
Hmm.
So we had Anastasia, who was like probably like the twin other half of me coming right? The other version being like, is it
Right.
really you talking to you? Um,
Right.
because I
This
do
is
always felt like I
you.
have this feast free spirit, but there's always been like this kind of like I don't
Boxed
know,
in.
a lot of blocks from
Yeah.
really trying to express due to fear, really.
Hmm.
So,
Right.
but yeah, it was really cool.
100%.
Really,
And
really
she was
cool.
like, I give, is it okay if I cuss?
Yo, go share, please. Yeah, I'm totally
Oh,
open.
she was like, I give no fucks. She was
Yeah,
like,
she doesn't give a fuck.
she
And you
just
were like, she's
gives
like prancing
zero.
around. She's got this like you said thing crown with candles and that really got me thinking because I mean there were things in my life that I'm like not that I look down upon people, but I'm like I would never do that. Like I would never go in the woods
Hmm.
running around naked, you know? And I've
Right.
said that often. I'm like maybe I need to do
Yeah.
that. Maybe that's what she's saying to do.
I mean,
Just
you
as
do
a
you,
form of
boo, you
expression,
know?
not to try to get people's attention. It's not
Right.
about
It
attention.
wasn't even about that.
It's
Yeah. It was
about
like,
freedom, a freedom of my body because there was this level of shame in my physical being, you know, I judged myself so hard since I was younger and so letting go of judgment was huge because she's like I could care less, just like you said.
yeah, she did not care. She was very free. And I mean, I even like, I loved her for that, even though it was like she was kind of in my
Well, it
face
was funny
at
because
the
at first
beginning,
you
but
it sounded like she was distracting the session almost like
yeah,
someone jumped
almost.
in and like like crashed the party. You're like, all right, I just got to address this person because and it did. I'm like, well, who
Hang
is this
on,
person? And then you're like, all right, she's for you.
person. It's like she's like, I am the session bitch,
I would love
like
to be able to
top
see
off
it.
queen. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yes.
And the fact that
And
you
and the
remember, how do you like if there's a memory of someone's reading, does it like come back to you like that?
when I'm connected to them, yes.
What would you say?
When I'm connected to them,
Yeah.
yeah,
Are
I
you
I
connected to
can I can
Anastasia?
recall. Yeah. Yeah, that's why I keep looking over here because she's like looking at me.
She's like, you're part of me now, girl.
Yeah.
So did she
She's
connect with
like,
you ever
did
since
someone
that
talk
day?
about me?
Wait,
Yeah.
tell me,
What
does she
now? I'm sorry.
connect now? Is she part of your life after that reading?
So the way it works typically is when once I've connected with someone and read for them, and um, I'm not in a space where I am connected to them. Every once in a while, I'll have a guide come back to me because like they're familiar with me
Wow.
now.
Yeah.
It's like they get to know me a little bit, and they'll come back to me and they might give me a message to share with my client, or if like my client, let's say one day you called me, and you're like, hey Becca, just wanted to talk, say what's up, or you wanted to ask me something. If Anastasia has something to say to you, she will talk to me. She'll be like, oh, since y'all are on the phone and you're here,
I had no
typically
idea
that will
that's how it
happen.
worked. And so she's there right now.
Yeah, yeah, that's why, like I said, I keep looking over here because she's sitting with me. She's like, hey, you know she's like, I heard my name and I just thought I'd
She's
come
like, well,
over.
now I have to come back because I have to be like, part of this conversation. I knew she's very strong. She's a very strong presence. And I think that's good. It's like a very strong, I feel it. Like I feel it too. I don't know how I feel it, but I resonated with it. And I almost like after your reading, so many things, nothing's a coincidence, but so many things like lined up. And I had like a whole other kind of experience when you did the past life meditation, which thank you for that. It was a great experience.
Oh,
Related some
thank
of the
you.
other experiences that we had. And then it got me into this place where like, this is where when you start doing work like this, it's like, it opened up a whole new door. And I'm like, oh, what do I do now? I don't know how to embrace this strong, feminine, like free energy. I had no idea. And then Ashley comes out with her
Ta-da!
her tease and her knowledge. That's what she did. She's like, I am the ancestor of the feminine energy. Come on over.
What's poppin'?
It did. I felt like, oh, that's how I'm going to learn, and I don't know why it just happened that way. I feel like you knew it because you and I were chatting a few times about, the environment coming there because I'd never done a retreat.
Mhm.
So
Well,
somehow
there's a
you,
reason.
yeah, somehow you knew, but, awesome. Well, it was great.
Yes.
Great experience working with you. I highly
Thank
recommend
you.
talking with Bec. Let's talk about some of the things that you offer before we wrap up.
Okay. So I obviously offer Akashic record readings. That's like my main thing. That's usually what most people come to me for. And I do numerology readings. I do what I call intuitive numerology. So whenever I'm writing a report, probably my most popular thing is my 3 month reports
Mm,
because it's like it is a lot of information. And so it kind of gives you like a section to digest,
yeah.
like every 3 months. But if I get like an intuitive message come through, because like I almost channel some of the stuff
Hmm.
that comes in. And if there's a message that comes in, I will include that in with your report. I am going to be teaching some numerology courses this year. I have one coming up here in the spring, and it's going to be about health and numerology, and just talk about like how to correlate the numbers with like
Mm,
what's going on with your health.
okay.
So I'm excited for that.
That's
And
awesome.
then yeah, and then of course I do SCHH and past life regression. I love doing that. And then so I'm also going to be um, doing or offering rather CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy coaching.
Hmm.
So this is like really directed at mindset and
Mm,
like kind of um, almost like rewiring your brain in a way.
yeah.
Because like I'm really interested in like thought patterns and people who like ruminate, like ruminating is like it can be extremely detrimental.
Yeah.
um so I just kind of am giving people like a template that they can work off on to
Yeah.
kind of, like get to the bottom of things and understand like why they think the way that they do, and then give them steps to
I love it.
changing that so it's more conducive, to what they're wanting and what they're trying to accomplish
That's
in their
amazing.
goals. And then I'm going to do trauma facing coaching, which is also going to be interlinked with the CBT. So trauma facing is literally what it sounds like. It's about like facing your traumas, um, and it's a technique, where you kind of like, I don't want to say you put yourself back in that scenario, like in a traumatic scenario, but you're talking to like different versions of yourself,
Hmm.
kind of like, inner child healing,
Yeah.
or almost like not being afraid to face it. So because like you have to feel it to heal it, right?
Right.
And that's kind of where that comes from. And then Qi Gong. So
Yes.
I'm still in training for Qi Gong,
Look at
but
you.
yeah, I did like the first level, and now I'm on the second. So
You weren't kidding
I'm
when you said you
hoping,
hit that retreat. You left the retreat hitting the ground running. I mean, look at
yeah,
you. You've been very busy.
yeah, and I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
I'm just so grateful for all the opportunities. And then Ashley and I have a retreat coming up this year, and we're going to be doing more. But this year we're going to be in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, in
Awesome.
September.
That's awesome.
Awakening, thank you, Awakening the Soul's Path retreat. I'm very excited about it,
Mm.
and it's going to be it's going to be different than the than the witch wind retreat.
Yeah.
This one's like the real focus is going to be like spiritual hygiene, like rejuvenate and restore, yourself, your energy body,
Yeah.
it's really like anybody can come, but I would say like if you find yourself in a profession where, you know, you work with a lot of people and energy and like healing and
Mm-hmm.
things like that, I would definitely recommend it for people like that because
Awesome.
it will kind of give you a baseline, you know, it'll like bring you back to center.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm really excited
That's
about it.
wonderful. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm so excited for all that you're doing. I
Thank
thank you
you.
again for like just um lining things up in my life. Like if it wasn't for you, like I said, it's like a ripple effect, like of so many people in my life. But can you tell people how they can find you? And do you do just do you just do remote? Can you do in person? I mean, if someone happens to be in Memphis and they could or near where you are, they can
Yeah.
come see you in person. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where you work or how they can access your information?
Sure. Absolutely. Okay. So I can do, you know, any of my readings, I can do them online or in person. My numerology reports and my oracle readings and my animal spirit medicine sessions, those are all written reports that I
Mm-hmm.
email. But everything else I can either do online or in person. I'm at akashicbec.com. You
Mm-hmm.
can go on there. You can find out everything and anything you need to know. I'm also on Instagram at Akashic_Bec.
Okay.
I don't do a whole lot of social media, so
Probably don't need
that's kind
to
of.
because you're the mom.
I thank you. Something like that. I don't know. But I also what was I saying? Oh, so I also do in-person readings. Like I have several different places in the Memphis area where I do readings. I have Delta Groove Yoga and Lucia Huge, which are both in Midtown Memphis. They're on Overton Square. I
Okay.
offer readings there. And then I can also do them at a New Day Studio, which is like a Reiki studio
Cool.
in East Memphis.
Wonderful. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yay.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me today.
Well, thank you again for
I'm a
coming
goose.
on. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you being here. And I want to thank our audience for tuning in today on this episode. And if you
Mhm.
like this type of content, please like and subscribe to the Conscious Broadcast. And we will see you next time. And have a lovely
Bye.
day. Bye.